In this I'm going to show you how to configure a layer 3 switch. The CCNA exam 20301 does have some layer 3 switching, and so it's important to know how layer 3 switches work. And in this example, this is the layer 3 switch. It's got two hosts connected and a server. So I'm going to enable network connectivity for these two hosts to these two servers. And what layer 3 switches do is they get rid of inter-VLAN routing with the old sub interfaces on the router. So I'm going to set up SVIs on here as default gateways for the host and even the server. And the routing is done. It'll be use default routing on here instead of OSPF for this lab. So it's basically setting up SVIs and verifying connectivity. So these are the 6 steps. So I need to configure VLANs for step 1. So I'm going to enable these. This is VLAN 10, VLAN 11, and VLAN 12. And I'm going to set up VLANs as my first step. So go to Enable and configure T. So first thing I'm going to do is interface FA01. That's the host 1 access port. So that configures for an access port. And I'm just using the up arrow because it's a little easier in typing. Switch port access VLAN 10. So I just created VLAN 10 as well. Now I'm going to do 02. That's host 2. And this time I'm going to assign that to VLAN 11. This is all in a layer 3 switch. And now for the server 1, I'm going to go through and assign it VLAN 12. Same 3 commands for each. So that configures the VLANs there. So the VLANs, these hosts are assigned to the correct VLAN. So the next step is to enable IP routing. So go back here and just type IP routing because I'm just using default routing here. So IP routing is all you have to do. Now I'm going to configure SVIs for each host of VLAN. So here what I'll do is I've already done the VLANs, and you can use this to practice yourself as well. It's pretty straightforward. Configure SVIs per host. So these are going to be, I'm going to set up logical interfaces, VLAN interfaces for each VLAN for the host. It's actually a default gateway. So I've moved the default gateway from a router sub interface to a layer 3 switch. That's essentially what this does. So I'll type interface VLAN 10, for example, and then IP address 172.16.10. I'm just going to use the VLAN number for the subnet. It has to be in the same subnet as VLAN 10. They all have to be, the default gateway has to be in the same subnet as the host. And that's 10. I'm just going to assign it 254 as the IP address. I'll go 255. This is just a /24 subnet mask. And then just do a no shut to make sure it's up. Then the next one, I'll do VLAN 11. These are VLAN interfaces, layer 3 VLAN interfaces. And I'm going to assign this to 11. So it's in the same VLAN as host 2. And then no shut. And then same thing for the server. This is 03 on the layer 3 switch. Oh, this is interface VLAN 12. And put an IP address on it. Make that 12. So it's in the same subnet. And then a no shut. Okay, so that configures the SVIs. Very important thing to know. And I'm going to exit out of there. Now I'm going to configure the default gateways on the hosts. So in this case, what I'm going to do is go back here. So the SVIs are configured. Now I'm going to go to the hosts. I need to set them up for the default gateway to point to that IP address, to that VLAN interface. That's going to be its default gateway now. .254. So that's the 10, that's host 1, the 10 VLAN. In host 2 then would be 11, which is that same interface I just configured. And then server, I'm going to do 172.16.12.254. It's in the same subnet. So after that, then it's just configure an uplink interface to router 1. So has to be changed to a routed interface from access mode, because this is going to be a layer 3 interface here. So what I'm going to do, go back here, and I'm going to configure interface FA04, and I'm going to do no switch port, because I want to change that, tell it I want this to be a layer 3 routed interface and not an access mode. So now it's a layer 3 interface. So you have to do that on layer 3 switches. And I'm going to assign 1.1, because the other side, the router 1, is 1.2. It has to be in the same subnet, because it's a direct link. So that's 1.1, correct. Do a no shut. And that's what I've done here. The default gateway. So there it is there. That's basically what I've done there. And now I'm just going to configure a default route to router 1 and using its interface. So that command's easy enough. Just going to go here. I'm going to exit back to global mode. Go IP route 172.16. Excuse me, no, this is a default route. So that's a default route. Send everything to 172.16.1.2. And what 1.2 is that 2.0 interface. So send everything right to there and let the router 1 concern themselves with routing. So there's that. And that's pretty much all there is to that. So I'm back up to there. And just verify, that's all there's. Now I just need to verify the lab. So what I'm going to do is just copy run to start. That updates the startup configuration. And done. So that's easy enough to do. So I'm going to go back to host 1. I'm going to make sure this works now. So I'm going to host 1 desktop and I'm going to send pings. First ping I'm going to send is to start with send something to server 12. So I'm going to send a ping from host 1 to server 1. Make sure that works. And there it is. See, I'm getting replies. So that works okay. Now I'm going to try 3.1. So this sends a ping from host 1 right across this WAN over to server 2. This could be at a data center, for example. So I got one reply. Usually you have to do this twice because there's routing convergence and updating ARP tables. So I'm going to run it again. This time, see, I'm getting all replies. So it's just a matter of network convergence. So host 1 is okay. Now I'm going to try host 2, same thing. Okay, ping 172.16.12.1. And there it is. The ARP table's been updated, so it happens faster, more consistently now with host 2, now that I've already sent pings to it. ARP tables, important to know how ARP works. And there it is. So that works to the server 2 as well. So I've tested the ping for each host to both servers and they work fine. So layer 3 switching is working. It's routing between these different, between host and server 1, and also sending packets up to router 1 so they can be sent over to server 2. So that's how layer 3 switching work. It's some basic concepts there, and you can practice yourself with the lab that's available.